My name is Carolina Copeland. I'm 38 years old, and for 7 years I thought I was married to the kind of man who held me together when I was falling apart. My husband, Mark, the man I trusted with every scar of my past. 2 weeks ago, I discovered the truth. My pain was just a game to him, a wager, a way to make money. It started with a message from Ewan, one of Mark's coworkers I'd only spoken to briefly at company events. His note came through LinkedIn, of all places. Hey Carolina, this is awkward, but you need to know something. Check Mark's Venmo transactions with Bianca, Lorraine, and Fiona. Don't ignore this. At first, I stared at the message, confused. What could Venmo possibly have to do with me? But curiosity turned into dread. Mark and I didn't share a joint account, but we always had open access to each other's finances. I'd never once felt the need to check before, until now. And when I finally did, 3 transactions appeared from a month ago. $500 from Bianca with the caption, "Can't wait to see this." $2,000 from Lorraine. This is too easy. $500 from Fiona. She's going to break like glass. All accepted. All moved to Mark's account. My hands trembled as I scrolled deeper, and then I found at the group chat he'd carelessly left logged into his iPad. The thread's title was written in smug cruelty, Operation Waterworks. The messages stretched back 2 months. Mark, trust me. I know Carolina's buttons. She'll cry in under 5 minutes. Fiona, really. She seems so strong at events. Mark. She puts on a front. I've studied her for years. Dead brother, strict father, the whole trauma package. It's like speed running a breakdown. Lorraine. That's so messed up. LOL. Prove it. Bianca. Make her cry in public. $1,500 from me. Lorraine. $2,000 if you do it on your anniversary dinner. Fiona. Another $1,500 if you get it on video. Full ugly crying. Mark's response chilled me. Done. Easiest 5K I'll ever make. Watch and learn. My brother died in a car accident 6 years ago. We were inseparable. I spent nights drowning in grief, and Mark was the one who held me, who whispered that I wasn't alone, or so I thought. Now I realized he wasn't comforting me. He was studying me, taking notes, preparing to turn my agony into his performance. The plan was laid out in detail. Our anniversary dinner at the fanciest restaurant in town. He'd bring up my brother, tell me how disappointed my father would be if he saw my life now. Then, as the final blow, he'd hint that maybe he wasn't sure I was emotionally stable enough to move forward with him. He knew exactly where to stab, and he was ready to twist the knife until I shattered, while his phone camera captured every tear, every broken expression, so his friends could laugh and pay up. I sat frozen on the couch for what felt like hours, staring at the glowing screen. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of trust, reduced to a cruel bet worth $5,000. Something inside me cracked that night, but it wasn't my heart breaking. It was the last piece of me that ever believed Mark's love was real. And from that silence, a new thought rose. If this was the game he wanted, then I'd be the one to flip the board. The night I discovered the messages, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, lit only by the glow of my laptop, my mind spinning between fury and cold calculation. I wanted to scream to confront him right then, but a voice inside me whispered, "Don't waste your tears. Make him choke on his own game." So I began documenting everything. Screenshots of the group chat, Venmo transfers, photos of his phone angled toward me while he pretended to text. I backed everything up in 3 places, hard drive, cloud, and email. If Mark thought I was easy prey, he'd soon realize I had sharper claws than he ever imagined. The next morning, I called my lawyer friend Terrence, who immediately referred me to Miss Rodriguez, a specialist in high-conflict divorces. The moment she read through the messages, her eyes hardened. "He doesn't just want to humiliate you, Carolina. He's escalating. We need to protect your finances before he burns it all down with you." Her confidence steadied me. Together, we opened a new bank account under my name only. I quietly documented every asset, apartment deed, savings, retirement funds. Then I installed a recording app on my phone, perfectly legal in my state. One-party consent. Mark had no idea that the same device he planned to use against me would soon become my greatest weapon. But the true confirmation of my decision came from Ewan. We met for coffee in a quiet corner of a cafe. He slid his phone across the table, revealing more messages I hadn't seen. Apparently, this wasn't Mark's first bet. Last year, he'd wagered $500 that he could stop me from attending my best friend Maya's birthday trip. He faked a medical scare and I stayed home. He won. Another time he bet them he could convince me to sell my father's car, a vintage 1969 Camaro my dad restored with his own hands before he passed. Mark told me it was holding me back from grieving properly. For months, I almost believed him. Hearing Ewan confirm these things felt like being slapped twice. Every sacrifice I'd made, every moment, I thought I was choosing love over selfishness. It had all been orchestrated, mocked, and sold for cash. I gripped my coffee cup until my knuckles whitened. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Ewan's voice was low, sincere. "Because I couldn't stomach it anymore. He laughs about it at work, Carolina. He calls it his side hustle. He needs to be stopped." That was the moment my grief turned into fire. At home, Mark played the doting husband. He'd been showering me with compliments, cooking dinner, bringing flowers. He kept touching my shoulder, brushing his hand along my hair, whispering, "This anniversary will be unforgettable, babe." I forced a smile. I can't wait. Inside, I was already sharpening the knife. Over the next 3 days, I perfected my plan. Divorce papers filed, assets secured, evidence prepared, my briefcase waiting. And when Mark tested his phone's camera angle at dinner, pretending to snap a cute selfie, I only tilted my head, smiling sweetly. If he thought he was setting the stage for my humiliation, he was about to discover he had just built the theater for his own downfall. The night of our anniversary, Mark was practically vibrating with excitement. He wore his navy suit, the one he usually saved for work presentations, and kept humming as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. "You're going to love tonight, Carolina. I've got something really special planned." I smiled at him in the reflection. So do I. He didn't notice the double edge in my voice. The restaurant he reserved was the kind of place where the lighting is soft, the wine flows like silk, and the prices make your chest tighten. Perfect for a public spectacle. Perfect for the trap he thought he was laying for me. Mark set his phone against the wine bottle as soon as we sat down, angling it so the camera pointed squarely at me. "For memories," he said, flashing that boyish grin that once melted me. This time I only tilted my glass. Of course. The first part of dinner was small talk appetizers and his fake affection. He leaned forward, asking questions designed to prod at my scars. "Have you been thinking about your brother lately? I know anniversaries make you emotional. Do you ever feel like your dad would be disappointed you never gave him grandchildren?" Each jab slid under my skin, but instead of wincing, I laughed softly, swirling my water like I hadn't noticed the knife. Inside, though, my heart was pounding. I saw him glance at his phone screen, checking the angle. No doubt his coworkers were waiting for my tears, their messages pinging in his pocket. Then came the toast. Mark raised his wine glass, his eyes locking onto mine with predatory precision. "To 7 years," he began. "Though sometimes I wonder what your brother would think of the life you've built. He always thought you'd do more, didn't he?" A couple at the next table turned their heads. Mark smiled wider. He was enjoying this. "And your father," he continued. "He must have dreamed of grandchildren by now. Must be hard to know you've disappointed both of them." The room seemed to still. Even the clink of cutlery stopped. Mark leaned forward, lowering his voice to deliver the kill shot. "Carolina, I've been thinking about our future, and honestly, I'm not sure you're emotionally stable enough for the life I want." That was his moment, the line he thought would break me. Instead, I let a small, bitter laugh escape my lips. Then I placed my napkin gently on the table and stood up. The restaurant hushed, all eyes on us. "You're absolutely right, Mark," I said clearly, my voice carrying. "I'm not emotionally stable enough to keep living a lie." He blinked, confused. "Carolina, sit down." I reached for my briefcase, snapping it open with deliberate calm. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, turning to the room. My husband here thought tonight would be my humiliation. He bet $5,000 with his coworkers that he could make me cry in public using my dead brother and my father's memory. Gasps erupted around us. Mark's face drained of color. "Carolina, stop." I held up my phone, the screenshots glowing. "Operation Waterworks," I read aloud. He even wrote, "Easiest $5,000 I'll ever make." Murmurs rippled. The couple at the next table shook their heads in disgust. Mark scrambled for his phone, but I was faster. I lifted it high, tilting it toward the room. "Recording for your friends, Mark. Hi, Bianca. Hi, Lorraine. Hi, Fiona. Enjoying the show?" His lips parted in a silent snarl. "Give me my phone." I ignored him, pulling a manila envelope from the briefcase. I laid it flat on the table with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Happy anniversary, Mark. You've been served." The restaurant was silent. Then from the back, an older woman whispered, "Good for her." Mark lunged toward me, but 2 waiters stepped in, holding him back as his mask cracked and panic bled across his face. "This is abuse. She's twisting everything," he shouted, eyes darting wildly at the crowd. I looked at the manager calmly. "Actually, the reservation is under my name. Could you please change it to a table for 1? Mark thrashed, but security escorted him out of his protests echoing uselessly through the dining hall. I sat back down, exhaled, and for the first time in years, smiled with relief. "Unforgettable," I whispered to myself, lifting my glass. "Just like you promised Mark." By the next morning, the story had spread like wildfire. Someone at the restaurant had recorded Mark's meltdown. By dawn, the video was circulating in local Facebook groups with the headline, "Man bets on humiliating wife, gets served divorce papers instead." Mark tried to reclaim the narrative. He went on social media posting long rants about how I'd ambushed him and twisted a joke. But the footage told a different story, his smug smirk as he mocked my brother, his panic when I pulled out the screenshots. People weren't buying his lies. Bianca, Lorraine, and Fiona, the women, who had put up the money for his cruel stunt, immediately backpedaled. "We never meant for it to go that far. It was just a silly joke. We didn't think he'd actually do it." But their Venmo captions betrayed them. "Can't wait to see this. She's going to break like glass." The whole town could see exactly what they were complicit in. Then came the phone calls. Mark's mother, Agnes, sobbing into the receiver. "Carolina, you've destroyed my son's life. He made a mistake, but you didn't have to ruin him." I stared at the phone, cold anger curling in my chest. "Your son bet money on my grief, Agnes. He used my dead brother as a punchline." "He was just having fun with friends," she insisted, her voice cracking. "If that's your idea of fun, then you didn't raise a man. You raised a predator." I hung up. Later, Mark's father, who prided himself on being a lawyer, threatened to sue me for defamation. My attorney, Miss Rodriguez, sent him a single email with the screenshots attached. He never contacted me again. But Mark didn't stop. He showed up at my office one afternoon, dragging his crocodile tears with him. In front of my coworkers, he sobbed that I was financially abusing him, that I had cut him off from everything. When that didn't work, he tried to whisper lies, claiming I was cheating on him, that I was unstable. Security had to escort him out. Another week, he broke into my apartment with the spare key I'd forgotten about. When I got home, my living room was trashed. My books ripped, my gaming setup destroyed. Glass shattered across the floor. The police reviewed the footage from my security camera. There he was, my husband of 7 years, tearing apart everything I owned, like a child throwing a tantrum. He was charged with property destruction. And yet, the part that hurt the most wasn't the lies, the threats, or even the wreckage he left behind. It was realizing just how far he was willing to go to flip the narrative, to keep painting me as the villain. For the first time in years, I looked at him not with sadness, not with longing, but with a detached clarity. Mark wasn't my partner. He was an addict, addicted to control, addicted to cruelty, addicted to watching me break. And I had finally cut off his supply. The divorce moved faster than I expected. No kids, no prenup. The apartment was mine before we married. My lawyer, Miss Rodriguez, handled everything with surgical precision. By the time Mark realized how cornered he was, it was too late. He walked away with nothing but his personal belongings, his car, and the shame he'd sown. I kept the apartment, my savings, my dignity, and something far more valuable, freedom. But Mark wasn't done embarrassing himself. A week after he was served, he emailed me an invoice. Yes, an actual itemized invoice for 7 years of emotional labor, household management, and career support. Listening to Carolina's work complaints too, 190 hours, $50, all 190 hours, $500. Pretending to care about her hobbies, 160 hours. $75, EOS $109, $500. Enduring her family gatherings, 500 hours. $100 EOS, $50, $1,000. Therapy level emotional support sessions, 130, $200, $146, $1,000. Total $415,000. When Miss Rodriguez read it, she laughed so hard she had to take off her glasses. "I'm framing this," she said between chuckles. "Clients need to see the kind of delusion we're up against." Meanwhile, the fallout spread to his co-conspirators. Bianca's husband saw the viral video and realized she had been making similar bets at his expense. Their marriage imploded overnight. Lorraine got hit with a workplace harassment lawsuit. Apparently, the betting games extended beyond me. They'd been tormenting colleagues too. Fiona's fiancé called off their wedding. He told her, if you find entertainment in someone else's pain, you'll never build a life with me. One by one, their lives unraveled, just like Mark's. And Mark, he spiraled. I didn't argue, I didn't plead. I dialed 911 and forwarded the voicemail to his family. He was placed on a 72-hour psychiatric hold. Later, I learned he'd confessed everything to the psychiatrist, thinking he'd gain sympathy. Instead, the doctor recommended long-term therapy for narcissistic personality traits. By then, Mark's job was gone. His company discovered he had been using work systems to plan his bets. All four of them, Mark, Bianca, Lorraine, Fiona, were terminated for misconduct. His reputation was ruined, his career shredded, his friendships dissolved. And yet through it all, he still sent me one bitter text after another. You ruined my life. You'll regret this. I loved you. But I no longer flinched at his words, because what he called love was nothing but possession, and I had finally walked free. 2 months after the dinner, the air in my apartment finally felt different, lighter, as if the walls themselves had been holding their breath for years and were now free to exhale with me. Mark's life, meanwhile, had collapsed into rubble, fired, blacklisted, living with his parents at 35. Every attempt to rebuild was sabotaged by his own past dates, ghosted him. After Googling his name, potential employers turned him away once they saw the viral videos. I heard through whispers that he even tried starting another bet with his new coworkers at a cell phone store. This time, they reported him to management. Some people never learn. As for me, I chose to heal. I started therapy, real therapy, not the warped version Mark used to gaslight me with. I learned how deeply I had silenced myself just to keep the peace, how much of my identity I had handed over piece by piece until there was barely anything left. But I was building it back. One Saturday, I pulled the old Camaro out of storage, my father's car, the one Mark once tried to convince me to sell. The engine sputtered at first, then roared to life as if shaking the dust of years of neglect. I ran my hand along the steering wheel, whispering, "I'm keeping it, Dad. For me." And then something unexpected. Adrian, a friend of a friend, gentle and thoughtful in a way that didn't demand or suffocate. When he first heard my story, he didn't laugh, didn't flinch, didn't pity me. He simply said, "You deserve better from the start." We weren't rushing. No fairy tale whirlwind. Just long conversations, shared meals, slow trust. The kind of foundation that felt like steady earth under my feet instead of shifting sand. Mark tried one last time. An email with the subject line, "Do you know what you threw away?" I stared at it for a long while before replying, "Yes, a manipulative, cruel man who bet on my tears. Best decision I ever made." His response came minutes later. "You were supposed to cry." And for the first time I did cry. But they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of release, tears of joy. I blocked him after that, finally, completely. If anyone out there is reading this and feels that gnawing doubt in their gut, that unease you can't quite name, listen to it. Love isn't supposed to make you feel small. Real love doesn't weaponize your wounds. Walk away. Don't wait until they turn your pain into a stage play for their amusement. Because freedom is worth more than any promise, any ring, any vow whispered under false pretenses. And as I slid behind the wheel of my father's Camaro, the engine rumbling like a heartbeat, I knew one thing.